Episode 31, The Haitian Revolution, an AP European History podcast by Hammer History Productions. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Miles Thatcher, and we are getting very close to winter break now, which honestly feels weird. Finals are coming up, everyone at school is exhausted, and somehow my teachers are all assigning projects at the exact same time. But today we're talking about something that connects really directly to the French Revolution episodes we just finished. Because when we talked about the French Revolution, Dr. Morgan and Professor Theo kept mentioning ideas like liberty, equality, citizenship, and universal rights. But now we're going to look at what happened when those ideas crossed the Atlantic into one of the wealthiest colonies in the world. Dr. Morgan, Professor Theo, welcome back.
Good to be here, Miles. And today we're discussing a revolution that completely terrified European empires.
And for good reason. The Haitian Revolution forced Europeans to confront a question many revolutionaries preferred to avoid.
Which was,
if liberty and equality are truly universal ideas, then how could slavery continue to exist?
yeah, that's a pretty massive contradiction.
It was, especially because Saint-Domingue, which later became Haiti, was one of the most profitable colonies anywhere in the Atlantic world.
Before we even get into the revolution itself, can we establish what Saint-Domingue actually was?
Saint-Domingue was the French colony on the western third of the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean. Today, that territory is Haiti. In the late 18th century, it was enormously valuable to France because of plantation agriculture. The colony exported huge amounts of sugar, coffee, and indigo to Europe. Historians sometimes call it the jewel of the French Empire because it generated so much wealth.
But that wealth depended almost entirely on enslaved labor. By the late 1700s, Saint-Domingue absorbed an enormous percentage of the Atlantic slave trade. Hundreds of thousands of enslaved Africans were forced onto plantations under incredibly brutal conditions.
Why was sugar production so deadly compared to other crops?
Sugar cultivation was extremely labor-intensive. Enslaved workers cut cane in intense heat, worked around dangerous machinery, and endured exhausting schedules during harvest periods. In some regions of the Caribbean, historians estimate life expectancy for enslaved Africans on sugar plantations could be as low as 2 years after arrival. Mortality rates were so high that plantation owners constantly imported more enslaved Africans rather than relying on population growth.
Economically, plantation owners often viewed enslaved laborers as replaceable capital. The system was designed for maximum short-term profit.
That's horrifying.
It was. Contemporary observers described Saint-Domingue as one of the most violent slave societies in the Atlantic world. Punishments were public and deliberately terrifying.
And this is all happening while Enlightenment thinkers are talking about natural rights and liberty.
Exactly. That contradiction sits at the center of today's episode.
The social structure of the colony was also deeply unequal. At the top were the Grand Blanc, the wealthy white plantation owners. Below them were Petit Blanc, poorer white colonists like merchants, artisans, and overseers.
Then there were free people of color, many of whom were mixed race. Some owned property or businesses, and even enslaved people themselves. But they still faced legal discrimination because of race.
And finally, the overwhelming majority of the population consisted of enslaved Africans.
So the colony was already unstable before the French Revolution even started.
Very much so.
Then the French Revolution happens in 1789.
And news spreads across the Atlantic surprisingly quickly.
Revolutionary ideas created political chaos inside Saint-Domingue because different groups interpreted those ideas differently.
Meaning?
Wealthy white planters wanted more autonomy from France. Poorer whites demanded equality with elite colonists. Free people of color argued that if France believed in equality and citizenship, they should have equal political rights.
And enslaved people recognized the largest contradiction of all. If liberty was truly universal, then slavery itself had to be illegitimate.
Did French revolutionaries realize these ideas could threaten slavery?
Some did. Others tried very hard not to think about it.
Remember, the economies of many Atlantic empires depended heavily on slavery. France's merchants, investors, and plantation owners earned enormous profits from colonies like Saint-Domingue.
So revolutionary ideals sounded great until they threatened people's money.
That's a fair way to put it.
One important figure during this period was Vincent Auger, a free man of color who demanded equal political rights.
What happened to him?
He organized an uprising after French colonial authorities refused to grant equality to free people of color.
The rebellion failed, and Ogé was executed brutally. But his death increased tensions across the colony.
So things are escalating before the big slave revolt even begins.
Exactly.
Were people in Saint-Domingue actually reading revolutionary documents from France?
Some were. Literacy rates varied dramatically, but revolutionary language circulated through newspapers, public speeches, pamphlets, and conversations. Ideas spread socially even among people who could not read themselves.
And enslaved communities already had communication networks. News traveled through plantations, ports, markets, and religious gatherings.
Then comes the uprising in 1791.
Yes. In August 1791, enslaved people in northern Saint-Domingue launched a massive revolt.
Plantations were burned, sugar fields destroyed, and colonial authorities struggled to regain control.
Was this more like a civil war or a revolution?
Honestly, both. Multiple groups inside the colony were fighting simultaneously while France, Spain, and Britain also became involved.
But it was also a social revolution, because enslaved people were not simply demanding reforms. They were fighting for freedom itself.
How did enslaved people organize something this large?
Historians still debate the details because documentation is limited, but enslaved communities had long traditions of resistance, communication, and cultural organization.
And many enslaved people had military experience or practical organizational skills from plantation labor systems.
The uprising also drew strength from shared religious and cultural traditions, carried from Africa into the Caribbean.
This is where Toussaint Louverture comes in, right?
Yes, Toussaint Louverture eventually emerged as one of the revolution's most important leaders.
He had been born enslaved, but gained freedom before the revolution. He was literate, politically skilled, and an effective military commander.
Was he trying to completely separate from France immediately?
Not at first. The political situation was changing constantly. Revolutionary France was fighting wars in Europe, while Spain and Britain tried to exploit the instability in the Caribbean.
Different Haitian leaders shifted alliances depending on who seemed most likely to support emancipation.
Then France abolishes slavery.
In 1794, the French National Convention abolished slavery in all French colonies.
That feels huge.
It was one of the most radical outcomes of the French Revolution.
But France's decision was partly ideological and partly practical. French officials desperately needed support against foreign enemies and colonial uprisings.
So enslaved people basically forced France into abolishing slavery?
In many ways, yes. Events in Saint-Domingue pushed the revolution further than many French leaders originally intended.
After emancipation, Toussaint aligned himself with revolutionary France.
Did other countries panic watching this happen?
Absolutely. Slaveholding societies throughout the Americas feared the spread of similar revolts.
The Haitian Revolution terrified governments because it challenged both slavery and racist assumptions about who could govern themselves.
Then Napoleon takes power.
And Napoleon had very different views about colonial empire and slavery.
In 1801 and 1802, Napoleon sent a massive expedition to Saint-Domingue to restore French authority.
He wanted to bring slavery back?
Very likely, yes. Napoleon restored slavery in other French colonies.
Many Haitians understood that French control probably meant a return to bondage.
So this became a fight for survival.
Exactly.
Napoleon expected a quick victory, but the French expedition collapsed.
Because of fighting?
Fighting and disease. Yellow fever devastated French forces.
Haitian troops also used guerrilla tactics and exploited their knowledge of local terrain.
And this is another moment where geography matters. When I've taken students to Spain to discuss the Peninsular War later in Napoleon's career, we talk about how difficult it is for invading armies to control unfamiliar territory while local resistance keeps reorganizing. You can already see some of those problems here in Haiti.
So Napoleon is learning lessons here that are going to come back later.
Very much so.
Toussaint Louverture was eventually captured by the French and sent to France, where he died in prison.
That sounds a lot like what revolutionary governments kept doing during this whole era. They remove the leader, but the movement keeps going.
Exactly.
After Toussaint's capture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines continued the struggle.
And in 1804, Haiti declared independence.
The first independent black republic in the Americas.
Yes, and one of the most radical revolutions of the entire Atlantic world.
Did Haiti's success scare slaveholding countries?
Deeply. The United States refused to recognize Haitian independence for decades.
European powers also isolated Haiti diplomatically and economically.
So other countries were basically trying to punish Haiti for proving slavery could be overthrown.
Many historians would argue yes.
France eventually recognized Haiti in 1825, but only after sending warships and demanding enormous financial compensation.
Wait, compensation for what?
France demanded indemnity payments for lost property.
You mean plantations?
And enslaved people.
That's unbelievable.
Haiti became the only country where formerly enslaved people were effectively forced to compensate former enslavers.
Haiti did not have the money, so it borrowed heavily from French banks.
So freedom didn't actually mean economic independence.
Exactly. Historians sometimes call this the double debt. Haiti paid both indemnities and the loans required to pay those indemnities.
Money that could have funded schools, roads, hospitals, or infrastructure instead flowed to foreign creditors.
That actually changes how I think about modern Haiti.
Many historians argue these debts contributed significantly to Haiti's long-term economic struggles.
The situation became even more complicated because foreign powers continued intervening in Haitian affairs throughout the 19th and 20th centuries.
Including the United States occupation.
Yes, the United States occupied Haiti from 1915 to 1934.
American officials often justified intervention using racist arguments that portrayed Haitians as incapable of self-government.
So people were scared of Haiti not just because of politics, but because it challenged racist ideas too?
Precisely.
It also feels like Haiti doesn't get talked about nearly as much as the American or French revolutions.
Historians increasingly argue that the Haitian Revolution should be treated as central to the age of revolutions.
Because it demonstrated that revolutionary ideas could spread far beyond Europe itself.
And because it exposed contradictions inside Enlightenment thought. European thinkers often discussed universal liberty while ignoring slavery and colonial exploitation.
So this revolution forced people to confront whether they really believed in equality.
Exactly.
Honestly, this episode feels heavier than I expected.
The Haitian Revolution is inspiring in many ways. Enslaved people overthrew one of the most powerful plantation systems in the world and defeated Napoleon's forces.
But it also shows that political freedom does not automatically erase economic inequality or the long-term effects of colonialism.
It's strange. Haiti won its revolution, defeated Napoleon, and abolished slavery, but it still spent generations dealing with the economic and political consequences of colonialism. It kind of changes how you think about what it means to actually be free.
That's one of the central historical questions this revolution leaves us with.
And it reminds us that the age of revolutions was not only European. The Atlantic world was deeply interconnected.
Next episode, we'll tackle one of the biggest historiographical debates in European history. Was the French Revolution worth its human cost? Thanks for listening.